back to the Vocal Vibe. We have here with us Wira G. Say hello, Wira.
Hello, singers and voice teachers.
Yes, and we also have Mr. Wise here. Say hello, Wise.
Hello, I'm Mr. Wise today, it seems.
And I am MelVee or Melissa, whatever you guys want to call me. It's totally fine. We're going to just talk about breathing stuff today, because breathing is so much fun to talk about in a podcast, isn't it?
Wait, what?
And you're
No,
like...
singing from the diaphragm.
Oh god, yeah, we're definitely going to get into that. But I wanted to ask you guys first, before you started studying pedagogy and before you started studying anything about like breathing apparatuses or anything like that, what was your definition of breath support? Where, if you want to go first, what do you think that breath support was before you started everything?
Well, obviously it's engaging the diaphragm when you sing. And yes, of course, I think generally this is something that I'm glad kind of all schools kind of agree on, is that we should breathe from a low place. One of the almost very few things that a lot of schools agree on. So yeah, those two, breathe from a low place and sing from the diaphragm.
I will start then, I guess. I honestly didn't really have a good definition. Because, like, you know, there were choir conductors, we already knew that different schools of thought existed. Some people would say you need to keep your belly flopped out throughout. Some people said you had to, what was it? I'm not sure if I'm, like, conflating things, but I think they were saying, like, you know, some people were, like, brace the core, some people were keep it out completely, some people were, like, keep it somewhat firm in the middle, kind of things like that. Or don't move your shoulders, but also don't hurt yourself by keeping your shoulders down too much. You know, so it's kind of, but it was generally speaking like don't, what's it called? Don't breathe with your chest. Like don't let your shoulders rise and don't let your chest move up and down. I think that was the general gist. It's just I didn't have a like, okay, this is breath support. I don't think I was that like pedagogically aware at the time, if that's the word. Yeah,
and that's kind of the whole point. So I grew up singing in my house, and my dad was always like, you gotta sing from your diaphragm, you gotta engage the core, you gotta squeeze the muscles down below. And I'm like, this is really uncomfortable. Why am I doing this? How does this work? He's like, I don't know, you just gotta. I'm like, Dad, you're not helping. Like, this is not helping me at all. And I didn't know that, I guess, clavicular breathing or shoulder breathing was, like, necessarily wrong or, I guess, bad. Which I guess technically it isn't. It depends on the singer and what they're doing. But I always just thought, like, okay, squeezing and breathing and squeezing and breathing. And it was just, like, not doing anything for me besides just making me very, very tired. Very, very fast. And then everybody was like, yeah, after you sing it, people were like, yeah, after you sing, it's going to hurt. And I'm like, why would I want to sing if it's going to hurt me? Like, why would I want to do that? Like,
yeah, that's actually, yeah, some people, like, they would say, oh yeah, after you finish singing, you should feel lightheaded. I read later that that's not a great idea.
Yeah.
You never really want to feel lightheaded. That's not a great plan. And I think you're talking about, what was it, squeezing and all that. We were told, you know, like, kick out your, like, you know, you do it's like kick out, but you don't really know where to kick out, so you just kind of like, there was always this exercise, it was like, you can hear I was like squeezing there. That's not how you're supposed to do it, but that's how that's how I did it, and that's why I hated that exercise so much. Well, but I was also told that, you know, one of the first, like, role models or something. Remember, I don't know if I said there was this guy who was leading his choir who was a bass and a soprano, and he was always saying, like, the peak thing is vibrato, and in order to get vibrato, you need to get everything in place, something like that. And one of those things he would talk about is, you know, breathing without your shoulders moving. And so I deliberately trained that first, you know.
Gotcha.
But it always led to kind of shallow breathing, to be honest. It always felt kind of, I didn't really feel like I was getting enough breath a lot. And, you know, I would see some people, they would be like, and honestly speaking, I would like resist that. But when I tried that, it actually sometimes felt like I got, you know, I felt like I was breathing more comfortably, you know. So it was always a weird mixed bag for me. Yeah, breathing.
Yeah, and something that a lot of teachers say, like, that I grew up with, is that they kind of put breathing on a pedestal. Like, oh, you can't hit that note. Like, well, you gotta support it with your diaphragm more. And so they kind of have, and if you can't hit that note, we're gonna work on breathing for like the next 20 minutes. And that's like...
Yeah, that is what happened to me in a voice lesson in the very beginning. I think one of my first few voice lessons that I actually took like a few lessons with the person, I think it was just, you know, they put the tissue paper in front of me and I had to at it and I don't know, see it go this way, something to do with a candle, I can't remember. But my main memory of that voice teacher was that I think he was laughing at me when I first opened my mouth to sing a song for him, so yeah, that's the memory that lasts. But yeah, sorry, back to breathing.
Right.
Hey,
Yeah.
you're good. You're totally fine, dude. So let's go over what breath support actually is, because there's so much terminology and buzzwords thrown out there about squeezing and engaging, and it's just not helpful at all. So
people think it's support, so it's like, oh, we gotta support it, let's use more air.
Yeah.
Ah! Yeah, good breath support right there.
That's not the case. We actually want to use less air when we're singing, which is insane. We want to use less air, and we don't want to shove it out and blow all this air out, because it's really damaging to the vocal cords in general. So, what exactly are we supposed to do? Well, we want to inhale, feel things down here and preferably in the sides expand outwards, and then we're going to release the air in a controlled way, so it's not all gushing and it's not pinched and held back. It's just a gentle, gradual resistance of airflow, courtesy of Justin Stoney's definition, the resistance of an exhalation using the muscles of the torso. That's essentially
Yeah, I
what breath
think
support is.
Scott McCoy said it's an antagonistic relationship between your inhale or your inspiration muscles and your expiration muscles. So it's like, yeah, there's that.
Yeah. You want to add anything to that, Wes? See you thinking over there.
Well, I mean, I do like the definition, but I think that when people talk about support, there's actually a multitude of things they refer to. So yes, there is definitely that element which Justin talks about, which is keeping the, inspiration muscles, basically, you don't allow them to collapse completely. So the inspiration muscles for listeners and watchers would be your ab muscles all around your abs, your transverse abdominals, your obliques, whatever, and you've got your back muscles, and you've also got your rib muscles. So there is that element to it, but because singing, it's there's multiple phases as you're exhaling. So when you exhale, what happens is, in the beginning, as you breathe in, everything expands. Then it will start coming back just because, muscles want to go back to their default state. So that's usually enough to get your breath going, enough to sing. But what happens is that once that reaches kind of like the default area or gets closer to it, the amount of energy from that actually starts decreasing. And so you will need to assist it slightly more. So it can get pretty complicated, and then if you're reaching the end, you probably want to take another breath, but that's where you need to start assisting the breath a bit more. And to me, that also sounds like the term support could fit really nicely in it, and that's probably why people use it when they're talking about use more air, But of course, with Justin's definition, it makes it quite simple. Just alright, it's the resistance to the exhale. It's go with less air, which will tend to make you softer or more controlled at the very least. So I like that because it's very neat and compartmentalized, but I also acknowledge that there's a lot that goes into it, right? Especially when people are saying things. That's why there's so many opinions on this, because it depends where you focus on, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. the best way I like to, and I'm sure you guys play with this as well after, studying with NYVC and Justin's stuff and everybody else's stuff and fricatives in general, I like to play with F's, S's, and SH's. Everybody, I think, has a different experience with each one of those. I know for me personally, the easiest one for me is probably the F, and the hardest for me is the SH, to try to hold on and sustain that. Because it's you have to hold back a little bit more with the SH than you would with the F because of the tongue positioning, the teeth, and everything, the lips positioning, as opposed to an SH.
I think we should explain why we're talking about fricatives. Yeah.
Yeah, so fricatives are just like a way to kind of feel what the resistance would feel like in breath support in general. So if you inhale nice and low, feel things expand, and then you exhale on a hiss or an S sound, there's like a little bit of a closed kind of, or I guess occluded is the technical term, of the space and the pharynx and the mouth and all that stuff to keep the air from all coming out at once. It's a resisted kind of feeling. The occluded mouth shape, the occluded vocal tract is going to keep all the air from coming out at once. So that's why we use the F's, the SH's to kind of get that feeling of what breath support is and what it should feel like. Yeah.
I think one thing that's also really helpful about those is that when you do a f or s or sh, you're not actually, like, if I take out the F, S, and H sound, right, with my vocal cords, it sounds like this.
Yeah.
Which is nothing. So your vocal cords are not put together. You're not making. It's not like a zzz. I mean, that also helps.
Yes.
But when you do the friction noise from your teeth being at your lips, because air passes faster through like small spaces, it makes that that rubbing sound. Yeah. And that's where you get that. So you're making more sound, but you're not actually engaging your vocal folds more.
Right.
And I think that's really helpful. Like you can, like you said, the resistance. And I think one really important thing, which is why I like Justin's definition, is that his definition of breath support, it specifically talks about the muscles of the torso. So it means that, because you can resist the exhale using your vocal cords as well.
Yeah.
You
don't want to do that.
But that's, so you want to separate that out, so then you would talk about more of compression and things like that when it comes to your vocal folds. But some people do talk about that as breath management, just to put it out there, because there are people who use the terms breath support, breath management, whatever. Some of them are talking about different things, but generally what I hear is breath management is this one, with your vocal cords.
Right.
Yeah.
You got any thoughts?
Why don't we give a quick exercise, if we can? I think that would be pretty
breath?
fun.
So
let's do like I don't know, let's say, what do you guys think? A hiss? A sh?
Yeah, let's do a hiss. Let's do a 30-second hiss. That's like the goal.
We have a timer here.
Oh my goodness. Do I actually have to do it? Okay.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Let's try this. Yes.
Demo time. I wonder what it'll sound like on the final recording. Okay.
Alright.
Alright, ready guys? We
Inhale.
are going to inhale. And guys, if you're doing this, don't take a big inhale. Keep it small and down
And
the
low.
bottom.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So ready, inhale. Nice and steady, guys. Don't squeeze. Phew! All right.
It's getting pretty unstable there at 22
Yeah.
seconds, to be honest.
Yes.
30 to 45 is usually the goal. The goal for most singers is 30 to 45 seconds. If you can do that, you're already in pretty good shape for breath support in general, I think, personally.
I think what you'll notice also is that we weren't doing...
Yeah, it was a very, very controlled, very, very resisted
You barely
feeling.
hear it.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know, maybe to listeners it'll be an awkward silence.
I haven't heard anything like, are they doing anything? What's happening? So yeah, that's
the point.
basically that's the definition of breath support in a nutshell. It's just a gentle, gradual resistance of exhale to, manage singing in general. And then of course, Wise brought up a really good point that we have our V's and Z's for more voiced breath support exercises. So we have. Or and that's just for more of the actual singing aspect of the breath support. So if you want to practice more with pitches, that's probably the best way to go. Your V's, your Z's, your ZH's, that's also a really fun one. I haven't actually personally tried that on a scale yet, interestingly enough. Yeah, got a little shaky there because I haven't really played with that one.
I also want to just chime in that, like, if you do the kind of stuff, you will feel your voice feels a lot better after you sing that. It's a great warm-up because of, as I think we were talking about the SOV. Were you talking about the SOVT, or did I get that mixed up? I think we were
did
talking
post a
about it.
video on the SOVT. It was a scene from High School Musical going.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, then I got mixed up. I thought you talked about it here, but yeah. So SOVTs are basically where you semi-occlude, where you kind of halfway close the passage between where your vocal cords are. That's where your voice comes from, and all the way up here. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of blocking it. So you can think of it if I do an or if I use a straw or something like that. That is a semi-occlusion. A full occlusion is if I
completely close everything.
The whole thing's just closed. Yeah, it's just completely closed. And so when it's partly closed, you get a bit of back pressure. So the air comes backwards, and it kind of feeds into the cycle. So as I understand it, it's like your vocal folds have to open and close, and it just so happens that when that air goes back, it kind of helps it to close really nicely. Somehow the timing just all magically works out. That the details, there's like math and stuff about it, but yeah, that's math. The idea. There's math, singing candy math, but you don't really have to know that stuff. Yeah, but when you do the you get that effect because you have this resistance over here from the and that brings back that breath pressure, that back pressure, and it really helps everything out.
It does take a lot of pressure off the folds and snakes, and that's why it's such a great warm up. Like that's just why it's such a stereotypical warm up because it's such a funny sound. There's a purpose behind it, and it's to just get the voice nice and loose. Takes away a lot of the effort that you need to sing the same notes, even as high as like the fifth octave.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. All right, so that's awesome. Thank you guys for sharing that, those experiences. Let's talk about the different types of breathing because I feel like these are very, very.
Oh yeah. A lot of beginner singers come to me and go, "Okay, let me sing something." Baby, you light up my world like nobody else, and they are not having a good time.
Yeah. So we have our clavicle, this little bone that sits right here that goes across the top of our neck and our shoulders. And whenever we have one of these big inhales, everything, including the clavicle and the rib cage, all lift up to create space for the lungs to expand. And this is probably one of the biggest breaths you're ever going to take. So like if you're swimming underwater and you have to take a big breath, you're going to be like trying to get all that air in and everything's just going to go poof, lift up and cause a bunch of squeeze and strain and tension. And just honestly taking too much air. It's called a clavicular breath. It takes in a lot of air that we don't necessarily need. You don't need all that air when we're singing at all. Now, there are some people, especially if you have, like kids, for example, like young children, can use this breath in an efficient way because their body's already kind of smaller in general. So, they should be able to use this breath in an efficient way because they can't really get the same amount of quality breath as the adults can. But, overall, if you can avoid using that kind of breath, you should. If it's avoidable, I would say you should. So that's the clavicular breath. And you guys,
I would say I have used that to my advantage, to be honest, especially in super long phrases. there's this phrase from, if you guys know Maria from West Side Story, that's that really long falsetto ending. She goes like yeah, Maria, and it goes on for like almost 15 seconds. I have to use a bit of that, and I think, yeah, I know a lot of singers who use that pretty well as well.
Yeah.
But yes, generally for those who are learning to sing, not really recommended, but it can be put to good use in certain cases.
Yeah. For certain cases, yeah, absolutely.
I think what Mel said about it, one of the things that she said was, that it can lead to tension over here, and I think that's the key point. If your shoulder breathing is not leading to you squeezing and all that, then by all means, it does, like, they're not definitely linked together. They can be linked, but if you can, and like, I'm just chilling, then it's fine, Because there are people who sing like that, and I remember I think it was a TED Talk or something where I think it was a group of 3 voice teachers, or like 1 performance coach, 1 kinesthetic something coach, I don't know. And then she was teaching the singer, and then the singer was going like, and then she was singing, and it felt like emotional, but then they were saying, no, you need to relax your shoulders more or whatever. And then she did the exercises with the balls under her armpit or something, and then she like relaxed, and in the end, like in the performance right after that where she demonstrated it again, she just did it again. she just breathed the clavicle again. So like, it's natural for some people. So, and some people, they use that to get more air.
Right.
That's what Wira was talking about. So
yeah,
it's not
and again,
100% bad.
No, it's not 100% bad. There are definitely cases where it is appropriate, and there are plenty of great singers out there who use clavicular breath. So it's not necessarily a bad way to breathe. It's just not as advantageous.
It's a great stylistic performance, like whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not as beneficial.
It does have the tendency.
Yeah.
It encourages tension. You can put it that way.
Yeah, it encourages tension for sure. Yeah. So that's your clavicular breath. Then you have your abdominal breath, which is what. God, sorry, I have like 2 billion jet planes flying overhead today. I don't know what's going on. If there's like a zombie apocalypse happening in Florida, and I'm just not aware of that. But like, I don't know. Anyway, then you have your abdominal breath, which is the breath that I tell a lot of my singers to start with, and that's the abdomen and the muscles, the diaphragm, the areas in here expanding as you, or I guess the diaphragm actually flattens when you inhale, I should say. Diaphragm actually flattens and comes down when you inhale, and then it comes back up and inflates as you exhale, interestingly enough, which is really bizarre. I always thought it was the exact opposite. I'm like, really? The diaphragm flattens?
Well, I mean, you have to think about it as from the perspective of the air in your lungs. So one thing that might confuse a lot of people is, we talk about, filling our lungs with air, but that's not actually, it's kind of in reverse of how the lungs work. The lungs actually are, it's like a cat. Cats, they follow the size of the container, you put them in the jar, they'll fit into the jar. So basically you are expanding your ribs, and the lungs, your diaphragm is at the bottom, it's going down, and that is actually creating more space first, because what happens is that your lungs are attached to all these things by a pleural membrane or whatever, Q Justin, bam. So it's basically all that stuff is moving out, and then now because there's more space and the same amount of air, that air has less pressure than the air outside. So you're assuming that your vocal folds are open, that air from outside is going to rush in to fill that kind of negative pressure, or not really a vacuum, but it's going to fill that in. And so that's why you need to, so your diaphragm is actually, some people think that their diaphragm is like, that's not where it is. Your diaphragm is not there. You go to your last rib, it is above it. It's over here. It's a lot higher than you think. Your lungs are not that cavernous. It's not actually, it doesn't go that low. And that downward feeling is actually after your diaphragm contracts, it's pushing away all of your organs. So your organs are kind of filling in all the cavities. So that's why if you tense up your your abs, then there's no space for the diaphragm to move because it has to push against all those organs, and it can't because you are pushing back against it. So that's kind of how the whole tension stuff comes in. But yeah, I'll pass it back to you, Mel. Mel.
Yeah.
I can't talk.
You can call me Melissa too. You don't have to call me.
I was like Mo. I was like, wait, what? Mo.
Mo. Just call me Mo.
One thing I'd say about the belly breathing though is that I find that a lot of the beginner singers find it a little too uncomfortable to be kind of pushing their belly out. Yep. Because it's such a, they're going from that to that. It's hard to push the belly out like that, and so this is a perfect transition to the next type of breathing. And so I usually recommend breathing from the ribs, just feeling just a slightly higher place than trying to like push the stomach out.
Right.
So this is just a more natural, but also a low place where you can also feel that if you do a rib breath, you can also feel that your stomach kind of naturally expands, just a touch.
Right.
Just a kind of a natural expansion.
I have to chime in.
Yes,
this is
please.
not your stomach. That is not your stomach. That is your intestines. So your stomach is also
your belly.
up here as well.
Your belly.
So your belly. So that's why I always people go expand your stomach. I'm like, wait a sec. So we gotta we gotta differentiate.
All the singing myths are coming back to me. Oh god.
Yeah. Because your intestines are here, and then above that is your liver and stomach. I can't remember where exactly, but they're both around. Like your diaphragm is like a little dome, and your stomach and liver are kind of like under that, and like there's actually a hole underneath your diaphragm to let the esophagus through to the stomach. So it's kind of crazy. So I can't remember the name of that, but it's there. So yeah. So I mean, you were talking about what's it called?
Intercostal
breathing. Yeah, intercostal breathing. Yeah. So I think now we can bring in the advantages of intercostal breathing as well, which are that if you tend to be like dancing or something, then you're probably using your abs quite a bit just to hold you upright and do all the moves, and you're bracing your abs probably. And in that case, your ribs are more free than your abs to do stuff. So including, breathing. So that's where it becomes really advantageous to use that.
Yep.
So over to you guys.
Yeah. So the intercostals, God, I have to look at this now, which one it is. The internal or external intercostals are exhalation muscles, but
external is inhalation and internal is exhalation. So how I remember it is bigger body equals inhale, because remember, as your body's bigger, then air goes in, and as your body's smaller, you're basically like increasing the pressure here, so you're basically, pushing the air out of the balloon in that sense.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
gotcha.
yeah, so external is outside, and because muscles only contract, like that's what they do. I mean, they can relax, but that's when they're not doing stuff.
Right.
So when they contract, it does this, and so they're in between your ribs, kind of. Yeah, and then if they contract, that means your ribs go up like that, or they kind of like swing a bit. And then internal, they're on the inside, so if they contract, it goes back in.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
That's how I remember it. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That's gonna be really helpful for me as well.
Well, I just remember I internal, so.
Yeah, that. No. Wait, hold on a second.
Wait,
I
what?
Internal, but then that's the exhale muscle. Wait.
Yeah.
It's the other way around.
The other way around. My brain works in reverse a lot.
Reverse psychology. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning the dancing thing. That was something I was going to bring up as well. Yeah, dancing, if you're a dancer, if you're a musical theater kid, or again, you just need to have adequate breath when you're singing, when you're dancing, intercostal is definitely a way to do that. And then, of course, you have the combo, our beautiful combo, the apogeo breath, which is the abdominals and the rib cage at the same time. And wow, what advantages that has. That's probably one of the best breaths you can do when you're singing, because it creates enough for more air to come in, so it's not like a huge clavicular breath, but it's also not too little for intercostal or too little for abdominal. You're getting all the benefits of both the dancing aspect and then just the regular abdominal aspect, and then, it's just a really good breath.
Yeah, people figured this out like hundreds of years ago. So, wow, breath, support, amazing.
So awesome.
And I had a student who, I asked him to, I think he was breathing with the diaphragmatic kind of breath the whole way. But then I asked him, all right, just how I get into it is I ask the singer to relax, like just get into a straight, sitting up straight or standing up straight posture. And what happens is, if you're not like collapsing your ribs, if you're not clenching your abs, sometimes I'll get them to do that just to feel what the negative is like. Then what'll happen is when you breathe, this naturally happens. Your ribs just naturally expand and your belly naturally expands. So if you go to like biology channels on YouTube, right, and they're explaining respiration, they are already talking about that thing that we're calling a podio breath as the default. That is how breathing works by default if you don't do anything silly with it. And sometimes, we try to get too clever with things and we end up making it worse when our body is kind of, in a sense, evolved to, breathe. We've been breathing all the way. And what the guy felt when I asked him to, take that breath was that he felt the breath was deeper. He felt like, oh, I feel like I got enough air this time. And for others, they can feel more control, because a lot of people, they tend to collapse their ribs in straight away when they do a breath. When they sing, their ribs just will go out and then bam, they just smash inwards. And getting really control of that, I think of it as an accordion. Like we were saying, the breath goes back in. You've got to be gentle with it at the beginning, but you've got to keep it going steady.
Yeah.
And but if you stop it somewhere or if you just smash it all the way, both are not good. So kind of a balance. It's like a really fine balancing act, I find.
Yeah. For sure.
I wanted to chime in one more thing because I think Wira was talking about how it can be quite difficult for some people to get the belly breath. I wanted to raise a point that was actually raised by another voice teacher to me. She's Mia, vocal coach. I think, Melissa, you've talked to her before. Yeah, so she's quite prolific on Reddit and all that. So she was telling me one cool tip where, I hope I'm not butchering this tip, but the idea is just take your hand and you just put it at your lips and then do a blow until you get a puffy cheek. Like naturally this thing will inflate. You guys can just try it, see what happens. Like just blow into your hand.
Yeah,
and it just comes out. Your belly just naturally does that. So,
but that's
same with
inhale,
puffy
though.
cheeks.
Yeah, but it's the exact opposite because we're exhale. Yeah, the belly comes
Yeah,
out when we inhale.
But actually, no. When you exhale, as you exhale, try exhaling.
No, I know the cheeks. I know the cheeks
Yeah.
puff up and inflate when you exhale, but your belly comes out
My
and
belly's
inflates
actually
when you...
my belly's actually coming out. Don't inflate your belly consciously. Just don't do it, and then do that. See what happens. Yeah. Because we're really good at expanding it consciously, but I find that it kind of helps. Like if you do a puffy cheek, it just sets your belly into a kind of relaxed position. I don't know, maybe it doesn't work for everyone.
Okay,
but
I feel it.
Yeah.
I also feel like it's. Oh, and I think this is a great time to transition to the solar plexus.
Yeah. Yes.
So, Mel, maybe you can take
Okay,
this?
yeah, sure. Yeah, so the solar plexus is a bunch of nerves that sit right below your sternum, and they should remain soft when we're singing. We don't want them to harden or squeeze or tense up when we're singing. And we also want them to slightly being the key word here, expand as we exhale. So if you take in a nice deep breath and you do, let's say you're doing the F or the SH or whatever the frickin' it is, and you put your finger right below your sternum and do that. They should stay nice.
Or why don't we give them
soft.
a nice quick exhale first, just to get them to feel. Like, why don't you guys try or even that, the puffy cheek, whatever.
Yeah, the puffy cheek's great.
You should feel it push out against you.
Yeah.
And that's the extreme, push. We can't feel it like that when we sing, of course. But yes, like Melissa said, if you do an F, you should imagine or at least think about expanding that area ever so slightly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, thank you for talking about that as well. Yeah. Have you guys ever been like, okay, this is a quick little story time. Have you guys ever played, have you ever played, I guess, two-hand touch football, where you like almost like flag football?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
So instead of tackle football, it's basically
it's American football, right?
But not tackle football, no. The actual
okay.
Instead of like tackling the player, you just like touch their shoulders or whatever, and that would count as like a first down or whatever. Like that's the definition of
rugby or something.
I don't know. Something like that. Essentially, we had a very, very large backyard when I was quite young. When I was like 9 years old, we had like a 2-acre backyard, and we took like spray paint and like literally painted a football field of the 10-yard line, the 20-yard line, whatever, the touchdown, the end zones, all that stuff. You guys have no idea what I'm talking about, do you? You have no idea what American football is like.
I've seen it, but
yeah,
I've seen it.
Yeah,
never got into it. Okay.
We're playing two-hand touch, and my sister, I guess, wasn't looking where she was going, and she rammed into the back of me, and I went flying, and I landed on my chest.
Yeah.
And I remember just sitting up, and I was like all tingly, and it was just this incredible like burning sensation of like I can't take a proper inhale. I'm just like I got the wind knocked out of me, which is kind of what that feeling is. The solar plexus is very, very delicate, so if we get a lot of impact to the chest, that can make a shorter breath. I just wanted to throw that out there as like a little side anecdote there of what the solar plexus can feel like if it's pressed against. It can give you that kind of like tingly, oh god, I can't inhale.
Yeah, I want to talk about also, in, let's say, okay, this one is a bit, I have another topic in mind which might be a bit not too vocal vibey, but I'll talk about a slightly less, whatever topic. So, if you're, boxing or something in a cage, and then someone holds you against the wall, like that, and you will not be able to breathe, because if you can't get your ribs out, if you can't get your belly to have, or your abs in general, or even your back, to have space to expand, right? Remember, breathing is not something that you kind of just command and then like air magically gets sucked in. No, your body has to get bigger in order for the air to go in. So if you are squished, you cannot breathe. So,
right.
You want to avoid that kind of situation.
Yeah.
So which is why it's so uncomfortable also if you're squeezed in between a lot of people. I mean, besides the fact that it's really hot and stuff. Yeah. So that's thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wanted one last thing before we get to the your next thing. So
yeah.
When Wira was demonstrating the clavicular breath, actually there's one more thing going on, which is the gasping part. So for gasping, what is happening? Remember what we were saying, which was that when we do an F sound of, you hear that friction noise because the air is going through a smaller place. And actually, if you do like a blow, you'll feel that the air is cooler near your mouth. And when you do a what's actually happening is your airway is more constricted at the back here. And so your throat is basically more constricted. So if you're talking about like open throat, this is closed throat. So when you breathe in that way, you'll feel a cooling at the back of over here. You can try and when you do like when you try to do smoke, you try to blow like smoke in winter, and or you fog your glasses. Yeah, that's the feeling. But when you do your tongue is higher up. There's less constriction over there. Maybe your larynx is lower as well, but the idea is there's less constriction over there, and you'll feel the cooling over here at the front. And that tends to, at least from what I've seen, and this is taken from Ken Bozeman's work, so it's not like my idea, but the idea is you can keep a more open throat in that sense, and I think keep everything calmer when you have that, your tongue higher, you get that ooh kind of breathing. So I like to breathe in on an ooh or a ooh versus a ah.
Yeah.
And it also has the side effect for me of not drying out my throat as quickly, because you have the vocal folds which can get dry, but you can also get the throat, like the back area of the mouth and the larynx area, that can also feel dry. Even though your vocal folds aren't actually affected, it's not comfortable. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
It's hilarious
things
because
that
I
I
just
think.
did the for a sound effect, but but I do know a lot of if you've listened to like Indonesian ballads, they're like the saddest thing in the world. In the radio, you can literally hear they use the gasp for effect. Like they are there in the studio with their mic, like before every phrase. It's so funny. But yes, it adds a little theatricality to it, I guess.
You have to actually reset your voice, because what tends to happen is people, at least in my experience, they tend to breathe out as they breathe in. So when if you do like you will tend to like keep that configuration as you go outwards, or you'll have to like move away from that in order to get to your default configuration. Whereas if you're like immediately it's like nice and SOVTE, so and yeah.
Building off of what you're saying, one of the ways my coach has encouraged me to find more of an abdominal or apogeo breath is to actually inhale like you're drinking through a milkshake, as opposed to like wide mouth. So like a very like you're sucking through a straw almost to get that control of the inhale, as opposed to like try to pull it in that way. It's gonna be a lot harder to keep it low. And
also, the gasp, right? You can get a lot of air by just emptying your lungs as much as you can. You can't like actually fully empty your lungs, but if you like empty your lungs as much as you can, and they just open up your vocal cords, then or you just like let the air flow backwards, it just fills up automatically. So you don't actually need to. That sound is not you getting more air. That sound is just your throat being constricted in order to create the friction noise. It's the shh, but at the back of your throat, and then because your throat's like it sounds like so. Resonance topics. Okay. But yeah.
Getting a little ahead of ourselves on that resonance.
We'll get there later.
We'll get there at some point. Cool. So I really wanted to quickly talk about different kinds of air pressure and what they kind of do to the vocal folds and the space and the tightness and all that stuff in general. So we have something called subglottic pressure, and we have something called supraglottic pressure. Subglottic pressure is air pressure that is held underneath the cords. That's why it's called subglottic, below. So it tends to squeeze a lot of stuff here, squeeze stuff here in general. And unless we are doing something that requires a lot of like Valsalva, or like, I guess Valsalva, I guess I should explain that as well too, but yeah. Valsalva is like this squeezing, kind of bearing down kind of tension that you get. Yeah, you use that when you go to the bathroom, when you cough, when you sneeze, any lifting.
Lift heavy weights. Yes.
Yeah, that's all Valsalva. That's essentially causing subglottic pressure and also like a spike in blood pressure in general. It's going to make your blood pressure go shooting through the roof. So we do want to use small amounts of subglottic pressure, but we do not want to rely on subglottic pressure to get a stronger sound or get a fuller sound at all. We don't want to do that as like our default. We also have supraglottic pressure, which is air pressure above the folds, so that's more like you feel it kind of like in your head above everything instead of below. That's kind of what high notes usually, I mean, in my personal experience, feel like when I'm singing a high note. I feel a lot more supraglottic pressure than I feel subglottic pressure. So what are you guys' thoughts on that?
There's a lot of placement talk going on there.
Yeah.
Let's not get into that rabbit hole yet. Okay. Well, yeah, Wira, maybe you first.
On the subglottic stuff?
Yeah, subglottic or super. No, the supraglottic on the high notes versus subglottic.
I need to get that placement chart. Give me a second. So, okay, I guess we can get into. So, supraglottic pressure it tends to be. I think we're talking about resonance and all the SOVT stuff as well, where the air pressure goes back, and what. So there's these things called standing waves. Okay, never mind. So let me find that chart. There's a nice chart that shows where people tend to feel where people tend to feel where their vibrations are.
Yeah,
That's
conductive
kind of sensational
resonance.
placement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't find it right now, but Ken Boatman has a really nice one. I think if you Google it, I think he has it on his website for free. You can just have a look there. Where basically, I think when you do ooh, you feel like the vowels. You feel, for me, I feel it here. You tend to feel like ooh, it feels like it's going backwards, but in reality, ooh, your tongue is at the back, and your tongue is at the front, so it's kind of all mumbo jump, like mixed up. But I'm not sure if that's what most people feel. That's what I feel.
Yeah.
Especially, we talk about singing through the straw, like, you feel the cooling over here, you feel it at the front. So, I don't know if that plays a part in that, but I don't know about feeling the pressure, because for me, like, head voice, chest voice, all these terms, I don't feel it as strongly as a lot of other people do, and I feel, like, I guess I can feel it in my head, like, right there, I could. But usually I don't really feel anything. It's like, it's just,
yeah, and everybody's a bit different. Not everybody's
Yeah.
gonna feel things the same way. I just know from personal experience that I've begun to try to steer away from keeping the pressure below and try to go more towards an above pressure, so my cords aren't closing and causing a bunch of tension below. I want to try to keep it above so that there's no below tension. That's what I'm trying to get at, I guess.
So I honestly think this one goes into like the deep end of resonance stuff. Like, once we get there, like, that's where that comes in. Like, okay, I don't know how much I can go into it, but basically, how basic is this? Okay, basically you've got, sound waves going through your vocal folds, because your air is going through the vocal folds, and you can think of the vocal folds like chopping up or shaking the air. You can think of it like that, and the air is basically like pulsating. You can think of it like that.
Right.
And that creates, the what's it called? The overtones, the harmonics, basically the pitch. So by there's actually a lot of pitches going on, a lot of frequencies going on at the same time, make up that pitch. And then what happens is each of those overtones may or may not resonate with some frequency in the vocal tract, just based on the shape. Vocal tract meaning everything here. And when that happens, it'll get louder or it'll get softer if it doesn't resonate.
Mm-hmm.
And then which frequencies resonate will trigger like different, well, one is the actual like vibrations, and two is like, your nerves and stuff. You feel different things depending on where the vibration is. So if I do like a very high, if I do a very like, even if it's not in your body, or maybe Wira does it's better, but like you will feel that vibration, you will feel it because it's so low. And that lowness actually triggers a lot, it means that a lot of frequencies are in your like nerve feeling stuff range. So your nerves will feel the stuff, but once you get, I think, above 1,000 hertz or so, you don't really feel anything anymore. Like your nerves don't really feel anything. So that means once I go to then, because there's only one overtone above that, I won't really explain too much, but basically you are at the limit of where you feel stuff in your body. And as you get higher and higher and higher, you get less of that buzzy feeling. And oh my goodness, I am going to stop right there.
Wira is our expert in harmonics and resonance, everybody. Give it a round of applause.
Wira?
Sorry, Wise. Oh, God.
Alright, you're Mullen, I'm Wira now.
Wise is our expert in harmonics and resonance. So
There's a lot more to learn from me as well, but yeah,
direct
that's the
your
basic
confusions and questions to Wise, and he'll be able to answer them for you. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I would. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, but I mean that's kind of why if you read some literature on appoggio breathing, you will not just get this idea of resisting the breath or whatever. You also get people who say that it's also about the resonance and how things kind of bounce back and everything. So it gets kind of confusing because people are not talking about one thing, which is why I like alright, when we talk about appoggio, yeah, that's what we're talking about. We're just talking about the combined rib breathing and diaphragmatic or belly breathing. That's all we're saying. But that's not what everyone else is necessarily saying.
Yeah.
So they may mean that in substance, like that's the main thing, but they may also be talking about all this stuff going on at the top. And then remember we were talking about how it helps your vocal folds come together, all that stuff. Yeah, so then, then it's like, alright, the above here is providing acoustic support. That's one way you can look at it as well. I like that term that was from voicescienceworks.com. It's a really great resource for like all the sciencey stuff. Yeah, and they call it acoustic support, and I think that's really cool. Like for me, I think of it as three kinds of support. There's like the breath support, which is what we're talking about. I think about like, I've seen one person say skeletal support, where basically you're aligned and you're not like, you know, in a position where your muscles are doing most of the work holding you upright. And you've also got the acoustic support. So the resonances are allowing you to get louder and not push so much to get volume. Because what tends to happen is if your volume is low, you will tend to want to squeeze more in order to get louder. Mm-hmm. But the problem is if you are not like singing in a resonant way, I don't know, let me say, you know, if I try to make that louder with more breath or more push, it doesn't do anything because I'm not sitting on a resonant frequency. So if I, then I can like do something, you know, if I, then I can actually make it louder because I'm sitting on a resonant frequency. So that is, to me, it's like, it like all kind of plays together. So it's like, depends on where you are in your journey. Like, I think it's less confusing to just say, alright, support is one thing, you know, just the breath part. And then the resonance is another thing. And then the posture is another thing. But eventually, I think, learning is all about making connections, and eventually they will all start connecting in your mind, and you'll have a framework and also a web of things going on. So, yeah, that's how I view it, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. That's again very, very cool to hear about resonance stuff from Wise. He's our expert in resonance. So once again, direct your confusions or questions to Wise. So yeah, I think what I was trying to get at with the whole subglottic versus supraglottic pressure is that we want to try to avoid the feeling of the squeeze below as opposed to above. That's, I guess, what the whole thing I was trying to get at was we don't want the folds to close down and everything down here to create the power. We want the power itself to come from the chords, and then maybe a little bit more above pressure than below pressure is what I was trying to get at. Because when we're holding a bunch of air behind the chords, it's going to cause a lot of squeeze and tension in general. So that's what I was trying to get at.
I thought we can link back. How about we end it with we time all the way back to sing from the diaphragm again.
Yes.
So, given all this crazy vocal pedagogy stuff, what do you think teachers are saying, or what could be the things that people might mean when they say sing from your diaphragm?
I mean, I still get a lot of teachers who will say that you still need to engage muscles and squeeze muscles, and that just drives me absolutely insane when I hear that. Or they'll be like, you're not using your diaphragm. I'm like, I literally am using my diaphragm every time I take a breath, regardless of where it is. Like, your diaphragm is always expanding or contracting when you're breathing.
But something I read from McCoy is that we actually do, about the muscle antagonist stuff, is that when we exhale, we can actually have varying degrees of diaphragmatic activation. Part of that as well. But most of the time, when I hear some of my teachers say, use your diaphragm, or like, you need to engage your diaphragm, I don't know, it could be it could be either use more air, like some people just don't use enough air, and they're just singing in like in this closeted form. Ma, 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 ma. They could use more air. They could even use more subglottic pressure sometimes. I have met lots of singers in the musical I worked on that I coached. They were just, maybe it's a psychological thing, I don't know, they're just so, personality-wise, even very, very soft-spoken. They're speaking like this all the time. Hi, Mr. Wira. And they're just not having enough, compression from whatever the pressure is, I guess. Well, Wise, you can elaborate on this if you want.
I think, sorry, I'm just, because I realized that I think Mel has some time constraints. So yeah, I'll just get to my thoughts on the thing, which is that I think it depends on who is saying it. If it is an amateur singer, sing from the diaphragm means get good. You know, G-I-T space G-U-D, get good. You know, if it doesn't mean anything. So like honestly, it just means that they don't like how you sound most of the time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you're talking about a voice teacher, I think or a vocal coach, I think you can divide into two camps. Or like, okay, there's a few, but in terms of the erroneous ones, all right, let's go with that. Then you've got the like clean singing teachers, and then you got the distortion singing teachers. So for the distortion singing teachers, I think what they're talking about is, at least I've watched quite a few YouTube videos. Every time they have a screaming tutorial, it's always first it's like, all right, there's 3 steps to the vocal fry screen. The fry screen. First, you gotta find your vocal fry. Now you gotta make it a whisper. Now you've gotta sing with the diaphragm, and then they're just do it, and then it's like, what? So
Yeah.
and then or like with false chord screaming or death growls, you're like, all right, first you just learn to sing from your diaphragm. All right, here's how you do it. Anyway, and they're like, yeah, I did. But some of them, they have the courtesy to show you what they mean. So they'll be like, sing from the diaphragm. You see, when I do this, huh, 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 huh. They will like show you their belly, and they will huh, huh, huh.
Yeah. Don't do that.
And yeah, and that is the, I think what Wira was saying, you know, push more air. I'd like to just clarify that, you know, when we say more subglottic pressure, to me that's synonymous with more air, unless you're talking about like airflow. But yeah, so so what they talk about is that Valsalva maneuver we were talking about, where you just like kind of close your vocal folds and you push against a huh, which can sometimes help to get a distortion, if not in the best way. You can get like that kind of thing.
Distortion.
Yeah, that's like you know, like maybe not great, maybe not recommended, but you can. And so that's those people. Then you have the people who are speaking about, you know, who actually know some stuff, who are talking about like voice coaching. But then I think it comes down to a lot of things. Like it can be lower your larynx. Like don't they might just mean like they'll say a grounded sound or whatever. They just mean instead of you know. So there's you know that lower larynx, a deeper sound. Sometimes that's what they're talking about,
which has nothing to do with
breathing.
Breath, like
nothing to do with it.
Right?
It might be coincidentally related if like you're, and then therefore your larynx is high, and then yeah, okay, just want to play with that.
Yes.
But yeah, so if that's the case, then yeah, but sometimes they talk to you about, you know, actually, honestly, it's the same thing. Get good, like, hey, you're not doing it right. If you have false folds in your sound, that is you not supporting right. You know, it's kind of an aesthetic thing. Like I've heard that on, I think it was TikTok, and an article I was reading about, like they say your whistle register involves your false folds doing this, therefore don't do it, it's always bad, you know, that kind of thing. So
whistle what?
I mean, there was one paper I was reading that, you know, it's not really like doing anything, but it's kind of there. So that one, further research is required, I would say. But when it comes to like, it can mean like what all the things that Wira said. It can mean resonance. It can mean hold back your air. Sometimes it means hold back your air. Sometimes it means push more air, which are two contradictory things. So,
yes.
But if you think about it like, you know, I mean, I would like to think about it as like an accordion kind of thing. So at one stage, you're holding back the air, and then the end stage, you are pushing out more air. So in a sense, yeah, it's not really wrong. It's just there's no real way to pin down what the heck are you talking about.
Well, my music director was like, I think she needs a bit more like a quality to her sound. And so I'm like, yeah, she needs to use her diaphragm. Yeah, I'm like,
You said that.
I got this.
Oh goodness.
I
Did
also
you
think
actually
it's-
say that?
Yes, it was the.
Ironically,
he was the director of the
Oh god.
the whole play. Yeah, he doesn't know too much about vocals. He's more on the acting side, and he just told me a lot of these singers need more diaphragm engagement, and I'm just there like, should I? Never mind. I'll just say, yeah, sure.
I remember like when I was in army, because Singaporeans all have to go through army, and then there would be this we call them Inchiks, you know, the warrant officers, whatever. So they're basically like not quite like sergeants if you get promoted. So those in the military will know, but like then they would always go, "Hey, knock it down!" Like, "Hey!" Like that kind of like loud voice that like projects over the entire thing, and then like they will be like, "Hey, no, you don't have to, you know, be as loud as me because you haven't trained your breath support." So, you know, in that case, I think it's a combination of twang and also just, you know, resonance and stuff and breath pressure. So it's a lot of things at once that people just conflate together. It's like, again, you sound good or you sound loud or good for that situation or whatever that situation needs. That is breath support, or singing from the diaphragm. That's how I think that most people think about it. So I would prefer not to even talk about singing from the diaphragm like with students. Right?
Yeah.
I was watching one coach. I think it's Bohemian vocal coach or some Bohemian voice studio or something. I can't remember. Bohemian something. And he was talking about how he uses terms that are different from most voice teachers out there, because what his finding was is that if you come with terms that people have a preconceived notion of, they'll think that they know what you're talking about. And I mean, in my head, it's like, you know, you substitute in and like fill in the blanks, but it's also like you feel overly confident in that idea. And so these people, they've already built up this idea, this is what singing from the diaphragm is, or this is what singing with support is. So maybe the best way to deal with it is just not use the term. But it's nice to talk about because so many people talk about it. But in a lesson like where someone actually wants to learn and they're not asking about that specific thing, probably wouldn't mention it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I was going to also add to that sometimes I think it's also a factor about more register based when the teachers, voice teachers are like, oh, you need more, you know, breath support. Sometimes it's not even really about the breath at all. It's more about like just being thin, breathy, and not having proper cord compression in general, which can make it sound like you're not using the proper breath support, when in general all you really need to do is go into your chest voice a bit more, add a bit more beef and compression at the vertical level of the cords, which is a whole other thing. We'll talk about another week about the vocal cords and compression, but like, the register itself can be improved. It can be a bit stronger as far as compression and register than more breath, which is why I think kind of teachers try to equate to diaphragmatic.
Yeah, we can only do like so much with the breath. It really is just our powerhouse.
Yeah.
It is, right.
Yeah.
It's probably only a small piece of the entire jigsaw puzzle that is the vocal singing, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to always think about the voice as three parts. I think this is quite common, this idea actually.
Yes.
It's not from me. The power, source, and filter.
Theory.
So so the power is just, you know, if you have no air going through, the vocal folds don't vibrate and like nothing happens. So like that's that. And when the air goes through the vocal folds, then they start, you know, vibrating and doing stuff, and that creates like this sound. Yeah, it sounds something like that.
Filter changes the sound. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the filter is everything above it, which changes the sound. So you have the so, and then yeah. That comes from the thing above. So there's so much more you can do with the stuff above, and they all interact with each other. So it's not to say that they're all like completely segregated, but it's like you have 2/3 of the puzzle missing if you're only looking at the breath. Yeah. And so,
and I'd say breath is, I don't know,
I'd
say it's really only like 20% at most. Like, we gotta get it right, of course.
Breath is a volume changer, not a power changer. Yes.
Yeah.
A volume changer, and yes, how steady it is, that has to be worked on, yes.
Yeah.
But there's also phonation and resonance, which are like so complicated. It's unreal.
Yeah.
Phonation
How-
just means making pitch for the listeners, and
Yeah.
resonance is the wow. So I'm gonna
The qualities
skip any
of
it
it, yeah.
deeper.
The quality
Yes,
of the
and
sound.
yes, we've tackled one of the three big pillars of singing.
We'll definitely get
Alright.
more into resonance in another week for sure, and I'll let Wise like pretty much take over because I know very little bit about resonance other than larynx height, mouth shape, and overall like where it happens. I guess when you're So I'll let Wise
there's so
lead
much
that
more
one
to
when we
learn,
get
but
to that.
I'll do
Yeah.
my best. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So
All
thank
right.
you guys for coming on and talking with me. I do have to go. I have a piano lesson in like 2 minutes, so I have to head up. But thank you guys for coming on and talking about breath with me. I think next time after, I think we're going to have Justin on the 25th for our next episode, which is insane. So I think, after that we'll probably go into more register stuff, maybe go into a little bit of the resonance as well with Wise next time. So that should be fun, and I'm excited to go there. So thank you guys for coming on.
Justin is Justin
Yeah.
Stoney from Wira Vocal Coaching, by the way, for our
Oh.
listeners. Yes.
So cool. All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.